back viewers, we're talking about the chronic pain syndrome in the court litigation process, particularly in work cover and transport accident claims. Tony?
Yes, John. Doctor, can I ask you the question of functional overlay? What is that? Is that chronic pain?
Well, this is a very interesting topic. When I was given the list of questions that you'd be asking me as part of this program, I started to look in my textbooks for a definition of functional overlay, and I couldn't find one. And I asked a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist, and he couldn't find any either. However, in one of the cases that you referred to, there is a definition of functional overlay as an emotional aspect of an organic disease.
So it's a secondary condition that comes on from some physical injury.
It's a secondary condition, but I think it's very poor terminology, and I hate using it. I think a much better way of describing it is abnormal illness behaviour.
Okay.
Doctor, for our purposes, sorry Tony, for our purposes it is really important, as we need to tell the judge and jury what the physical injury and what the functional overlay is in respect of what's been assessed by the judge and by the court. If we can't do that, we'll be in trouble.
I understand that that's a great difficulty, and this is one of the difficulties where there is a difficulty in interpreting the differences between law and medicine. However, you could, for example, if you had somebody who fell and broke their arm, and their arm is subsequently healed, and then that individual is still not using their arm, even though there is no sign of complex regional pain syndrome or causalgia, then you could regard that as being a functional overlay.
Well, the question being,
John,
has the arm actually healed?
Well, that's right, but you see, if you're dealing with something like a fracture, it's quite simple because you can take x-rays and you can show that the bones have united and that they are well healed. If you are dealing with something like back pain, then it's much harder to identify whether there is still a continuing problem going on.
Doc, one of the problems with chronic pain is that there's all these terms they throw around like damaged and inflammatory chemicals and in the body. You talk about altered posture and movement patterns that serve only to perpetuate hyperirritable muscles, whatever that means, and pain sensitization, suffering persistent pain once pain system becomes irritable. I mean, it sounds complicated.
It is complicated, but the process of developing chronic pain is that it develops over a period of time. There are changes in the way the nerve pathways function, which is the simplest way of putting it. And a nerve pathway is the way the nerve impulse goes from the particular area which was painful to the brain.
Well, doctor, does that mean everyone gets chronic pain?
No, not everyone gets chronic pain. About somewhere between 10 and 30% do get chronic pain after a particular injury.
Look, before John, we were talking about the case of Stambulakis, Doctor, and John, and in that one there, the problem for the plaintiff was that they couldn't disentangle the physical and psychiatric components of the injury. Now, the case of Jay Talaki, John, was something that followed from Stambulakis. What happened in that case?
Yes, it was the Victorian Court of Appeal in the Supreme Court, 2008 case. Tony, Jay Talaki was a 45-year-old man who was born in Sri Lanka. He migrated to Australia in the early 90s, 1992, working at his employer, who were Toyota actually.
Sustained a nasty back injury, didn't he?
Sustained a nasty back injury over the course of employment. By 2001, he has to stop work. He's made repeated complaints. Now, again, this has ended up in the Court of Appeal, Tony.
So he lost in the first instance, I understand. What happened
Yes.
there, Doctor, was that the judge said they couldn't disentangle between the physical and the psych, went to the Court of Appeal, and in the Court of Appeal, my understanding is that the judge that was hearing, or the judges that were hearing the case said that because the physical injury stood alone on its own, notwithstanding the fact there was functional components or functional overlay, then the plaintiff wins on the basis it's a physical injury.
Yes, Justice Ashley, in the leading judgment of that case, stated that the low back condition was clearly the serious injury. And in this case, it stood out and there was no need for this stripping away of the psychological aspect of the claim where The doctors had actually attempted to do that in the medical reports, and Justice Ashley, in his judgment, was saying, look, they've tried their best, but really, in this case, it doesn't really matter anyway because the physical injury stands out.
alone. That's it.
Exactly.
Look, it just shows you how serious is this chronic pain, doctor? Is it serious or?
Well, it can be enormously serious. For some particular patients, if it goes on for long enough, it can cause them to have family breakdown, they get into financial difficulties, they get depressed, they get angry, they get frustrated, and in some cases that I'm aware of, they have actually committed suicide as a result of their persistent pain problems.
That's why it's a psychological injury.
And that's why it becomes a psychological injury.
But you'd say it's physical, Joe.
Because the basis of it was a physical injury.
The original basis was a physical injury, and the persistent pain has a physical basis, but because it goes on for so long, they then have a psychological component to it.
Yes, and that's fair enough. That's logical in the sense that we all, if we have a physical injury, we would then start suffering stress and anxiety, Tony.
Well, John, I take the Chief Judge's approach. I reckon it's psychological, chronic pain. You say it's physical, but the doctor takes 50 cents each way. He's got physical and psych going on here. But look, the important thing is, do they ever get over these conditions? Do they get over the chronic pain?
Some people do, and the important thing is that it is unpredictable as to when they will get over the chronic pain. But as a very brief aside, I got knocked over by a car about 40 years ago. Every so often I can still feel pain in the area where I was hit and where I had one
40
single
years?
Was it a
stitch
nasty
ago.
injury at the time, doctor?
It was a trivial injury where I had one suture put in,
One stitch.
one stitch.
And
But I
he's
can
suffered-
still
and
feel
he's
it
got
40
stitches
years
ever since.
afterwards.
Gee, I'm not sure if I can get you any money for that, doctor.
Just as well he got settled before he come on the show, John, because I think it would have been a problem, one stitch. But
Well, this is, I guess, the problem that us litigators have, Tony, in the sense that we still have to take into account what the physical injury is and what the psychological impact on that physical injury is.
look, the key to it is this, viewers. It's a very complex subject we're discussing tonight of chronic pain, which was a lead up from last week. And maybe we're going to have to take up discussion some other time, Doctor, because time's running out. But I do want to really thank you sincerely for coming on the show, and I'm sure the viewers found this interesting. And we're going to have to go to the mailbag and sponsors break. So viewers, please don't go away. We'll be back shortly with Caffeino Mailbag. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.